Uncertainty is the state of being where something is either not known or not decided. When something is unknown or not decided relative to a circumstance that causes us stress or pain, it makes us feel vulnerable. There is no sense of resolution. This lack of resolve in and of itself adds to the distress that you feel. There's no relief. It feels like you're stuck in a powerless place with no sense of control, completely at the mercy of the world. It puts you into a kind of despair, and from that despair comes hopeless desperation. The most common secondary feeling to experience as a result of uncertainty is desperation. Desperation feels like an inner panic clawing against the hopelessness and towards a solution that you do not have yet and can't ever get a hold of. Uncertainty is one of the most painful states that a person can be in. We can have a sense of uncertainty relative to things that are temporary, like a loved one being in the emergency room or a relationship breakdown. It can also be in relationship to something that's more long-term, something like the uncertainty of our future. Either way, uncertainty is something that we all have to deal with in our life. That's what makes it such an important topic. Now, it would seem common understanding that if you had an issue with uncertainty, all you would have to do is to become certain. Find a resolution, make a decision, or figure out all you can know about what you don't know. But in fact, the solution to uncertainty is the exact opposite. When we are struggling with uncertainty, we begin to resist the uncertainty until we get to the point where we are not a vibrational match to certainty at all. We quite literally find ourselves in situations where no matter how hard we try, we can't find the solution. No matter how hard we try, we can't make a decision, and no matter how hard we try, we can gain no new knowledge. When we reach this point, our one option is to release resistance to uncertainty. How do we do this? We embrace uncertainty. What I've just said might seem like a contradiction to the idea that you create your own reality. Those of you who are familiar with create your own reality might be thinking, well, if you know what you want, why don't you just focus on that and create that instead of embracing what is? Well, the first thing you have to understand is that if we're in uncertainty, most of us are really confused about what we want, so we don't really know what that focus is. Also, you can't create what you want as long as you are in resistance to what is. Trying to create what we want while simultaneously being in resistance to what is a lot like paddling your canoe down a lake while also having your fishing line snagged on a branch that's on the bottom of the lake. You can't actually go anywhere because you've got opposing vibrations. So embracing uncertainty, and of course the subsequent curiosity that comes as a result of embracing the uncertainty, is a little bit like unhooking that fishing line from the bottom of the lake so that you can progress forward down the lake in your canoe. In other words, embracing what is, including the uncertainty of what is, actually enables us to create our own reality in a more efficient way. Rather than talk to you all day about uncertainty in and of itself, I'm just going to jump right into the good stuff. What the hell are we supposed to do when we're in a space of uncertainty and we hate it? Step 1. We've got to stop trying to find the solution. Instead of trying to feel certain or find solutions or gain knowledge, we need to dive deep into the painful feelings that have come up as a result of the uncertainty and grace them with our unconditional presence. If we find that we are struggling with uncertainty, it's highly likely that we are being called to integrate the aspects of ourselves, our childhood wounds, that felt desperate, that felt powerless, that felt at the mercy of the world, that may have felt hopeless. To understand this process better, I want you to watch my YouTube video titled, How to Heal the Emotional Body. Step 2. We begin to live by this truth. Whatever is happening to me is obviously supposed to be happening because it is happening. Therefore, I am open to seeing why. The circumstances that you are experiencing are not the cause of your suffering. The cause of your suffering is the fact that you think that the circumstances that are happening should not happen or are not supposed to be happening. I'm going to repeat this for you. The circumstances you are experiencing are not the cause of your suffering. The cause of your suffering is the thought that what is happening should not be happening or is not supposed to be happening. I'm going to remain silent for a few seconds so you can ponder this truth and really see how true this is in your current circumstance. Let it impact you. Even if you are a scientist at heart, you have to acknowledge somewhere within you that you cannot be 100% certain that what's happening is not supposed to be happening. Feel the lightness of that truth. I'm going to ask you to take one step further and to adopt the potential of the idea that what is happening is supposed to be happening. Even if you believe in I create my own reality, this is the case. Here's why. After you have given rise to your desire and the universe has heard you, the universe at large, with that perspective, which is all-encompassing that it has, knows the shortest shortcut to get you from where you are to where you want to be. But from our perspective, that shortcut may feel like a hell of a detour. For example, say you were in the process of creating the very perfect relationship because that's what you desire most. But then your husband or wife, whom you were trying to create that perfect relationship with, walks through the door and says, "I'm not in love with you. In fact, I want someone else." At that moment, you'd feel like you messed up. You'd feel like you were way off course. In actuality, the universe, from its perspective, understood that what you wanted was the best possible relationship, and so it took you there. Here's how it goes. As a result of the divorce, you might gain self-awareness and self-esteem to the degree that you might go on a trip in a foreign country where you meet a partner who suits you 1,000 times better than the spouse who left you in the first place. We must surrender to the degree that while we understand that we create our reality by virtue of our desires and our focus on those desires, the universe will lead us to those desires in ways that we could not possibly expect. If we adopt the idea that whatever is happening is obviously supposed to be happening because it's happening, we suddenly become open to seeing how our current experience might be leading us towards our desires or giving us powerful gifts instead of leading us away from what we want and causing us to suffer. Step 3. Realize that we do not fear the unknown and figure out what it is that you are afraid of about the unknown. I fear the unknown is a really popular scapegoat, except for it's not true at all. Why? Because if you didn't know, you wouldn't fear it. So what's really happening is that you are afraid of what you are projecting into the unknown. You're afraid of what you think you know about the unknown. For example, I may say that I fear the unknown when I'm talking about my future, but in truth, the fact is, I'm afraid there is an actual potential that my future could be painful because of accidents or failures or any number of things. So the question you got to ask yourself is, what is it that I think the unknown contains? Face those fears, release resistance to those. 4. Let go of your attachment to the outcome. Uncertainty can be really, really painful when we know what we really, really want, but it hasn't come to fruition yet. For example, I may really know I want to go to school at Stanford, but Stanford has not set an acceptance letter or a rejection letter yet, so I'm in a space of uncertainty. And in this scenario, what's torturing me is the attachment I have to the outcome I want. I become hyper-controlling of everything in my external world when I have an attachment to how things have to turn out. I obsess about how things are supposed to be. This also prevents me from noticing the other gifts, potentials, and opportunities around me. So one of the best practices is to let go of our need for things to be a certain way. One of my favorite ways to do this is to have people imagine the scenario or the outcome that they want really, really badly. Then to imagine that that particular scenario is contained, like within a balloon. And then they imagine that that balloon is tied to them via a string or a ribbon to some part of their body. Maybe it's tied around their heart, maybe it's tied around their wrist. And what I have them do is to imagine untying that string or ribbon and letting go of that scenario, the outcome that they want, surrendering it up to the sky. So as they watch it float away, they understand that the universe is claiming it. It's almost like you're putting your order in with the universe, and now it's the universe's job to bring you what it is that you want, and it's your job to receive it. Knowing that the outcome is in the hand of the universe, and knowing that the universe knows the best way to get you to that outcome the quickest, makes it easier for you to stop controlling things that you actually have no control over. Of course, you must stay open to the idea that the way to get to that outcome the quickest might be completely different than you thought. Then, having released that outcome, go about your day in the name of joy, placing your mind on things that bring you pleasure in real time. Step 5. Notice the positives around you. When we're in uncertainty, we're stuck. And when we're stuck, we have one option, and that's to try to find the positive in being where we are. In uncertainty, our mind is paralyzed by worry. We become so negatively focused towards what is that we spend our life trying to get somewhere else. We spend our time worrying and expecting the worst. It's exhausting and it turns our world completely black. Doom sets in. We can experience anxiety attacks, and depression. So what we have to do is to begin deliberately looking for things we enjoy about the exact place that we are stuck at. To get aggressive with you, I call this looking for the moonlight in the jail cell. If I'm stuck in a jail cell, my life has gone seriously downhill, to the degree that it might be really impossible to think that there are any positives to the situation. But let's say I'm stuck in that jail cell, and there is a shaft of moonlight that's coming into the room. I have an option to either look at the moonlight or at the jail bars. Scan your reality for what you do like about it, and especially spend time focusing on what is positive about the negative circumstance that you're in uncertainty about, whatever's causing you pain. One of the best ways to do this is to carry a positive aspects journal with you. Now, this requires some discipline, especially when you're negatively snowballing. But every time you feel yourself negatively snowballing, I want you to bring that journal out, and I want you to force yourself to look around your environment, almost like a scavenger hunt, for things that you appreciate about the now. For more ideas about how to counteract the doom and worry inherent in uncertainty, I want you to watch my videos titled How to Raise Your Frequency and Increase Your Vibration, How to Stop Worrying, and How to Stop Expecting the Worst. I will tip you off that if you manage to find the gifts inherent in the circumstance that is making you suffer, your suffering will be greatly reduced, if not eliminated completely. 6. Begin the practice of riding the rapids and the currents of your life. If we pretend that our life journey is a river, the majority of us spend our time and effort trying to divert the river, trying to control the river itself, instead of ourselves within the river. In order to embrace uncertainty, we need to let go of the idea that we can control the river itself. This is what we are trying to do when we try to find and hold on to certainty in our life. But the only certainty is uncertainty. If you adopt the idea that the only certain thing is uncertainty, you will stop trying to control your life. You will head in the general direction of things you know you want and instead let the current of life take you. Instead of fight against it, you will see what it wants to show you and where it wants you to go. A curiosity develops, a willingness to change course as you go along. And this curiosity enables you to go through the ups and through the downs of life, which could be compared to the rapids in a river, without resisting them. Think about going down the Grand Canyon. If you turned upstream and tried to swim, you would drown. The only thing you can do is to try to ride that current. And if you are not resistant to the ups and downs, you're in a state of peace, in fact. If you could not know where life would take you, and if you could not control the current of the river, all that would be left was curiosity. Instead of certainty, live with curiosity about what will happen. Approach the world with an attitude of, I wonder what will happen, and then watch the story unfold. 7. See the beauty of not knowing. One of the things that we get into when we're obsessed with finding certainty is figuring out what's right or wrong, and knowing what's right or wrong, and knowing everything. If we are struggling with uncertainty, we need to embrace the idea that we can never be 100% sure. The ego is obsessed with knowing because it is convinced that if it knows enough, it's going to be able to prevent pain. But a state of learning is a higher state than a state of knowing because it is a state that is open to all possibilities. The state of knowing is in fact a state of endedness. It's a state of closedness to all further possibilities. This is the way that this universe works. Questions lead to more answers, which lead to more questions, which lead to more answers, which lead to more questions. And we have to become okay with that general flow. We have to become okay with the idea that we can still live in the meantime even if we don't know everything. And one of the best ways to live in this way is to embrace the idea of maybe. After every truth that you hold, get in the habit of placing maybe after that truth. A state of an open mind with regards to uncertainty is like having a life vest in a river. 8. Let the mud settle. A master of your physical dimension understands when there is a time for movement and when there is a time for stillness. There is an old Buddhist philosophy that when we're in a state of uncertainty, we're in a state of chaos. It's a bit like standing in a lake where we've kicked the mud up from the lake bed below, and now the water is cloudy to the degree that we can't see clearly. Trying to become certain when we're in that state of uncertainty is like desperately trying to get the mud to go back to the place that it was. When we do that, all that happens is the water gets even more muddy. So what we have to do is let the mud settle. We do that by becoming very still. If we would just be still, the mud would settle and we would begin to see clearly again. Practically, this means if you're in a state of uncertainty, it is a time for stillness. You need to come back to yourself, not make rash actions or rash decisions. You see, we don't know until we know. So when we reach the state of stillness and we let the mud settle, instead of frantically trying to find the solutions, instead, we let the solutions come to us. We let the knowing come to us. Quieting your mind through meditation is a very good idea to enhance this phase of stillness. So add meditation to your daily routine, preferably first thing in the morning. 9. Question everything. Question yourself. Question your beliefs. You're already in a space of questioning, whether you're conscious of it or not, if you're struggling with uncertainty. So you might as well jump on board. Sometimes involving other people, like therapists or like friends or like family, is a good idea when it comes to this kind of questioning, because perhaps they have a perspective or a question which you haven't thought of before. And there is no power like the right question to give you the answer that you've been looking for. One of my favorite ways to do this is to contact friends or family or therapists and to tell them the situation that you're dealing with that you feel a high degree of uncertainty about. And then ask them to come up with a list of questions that they would ask you to think about relative to that particular situation. In my opinion, one of the most important questions to ask yourself is, what can I learn from this? Another form of this questioning involves questioning your own beliefs and painful thoughts. And my favorite process for doing this is Byron Katie's process called the work. So try any of these techniques and see which one works the best for you. 10. Play a game called What Would I Tell Someone Else Who Is in This Exact Situation? Sometimes when we are in first-person perspective, we feel all of the gravity and all of the risks involved with this particular situation that we're in. So it helps us sometimes to disidentify with ourselves. We can do this by imagining that we are a therapist who just sat down in a chair, and a duplicate of ourselves just walked in and sat down opposite us and told us that they were in the situation that we are in fact in. Looking at them, then you can ask yourself the question, what would I tell that person? What advice would I give about the situation to someone else? This practice can bring about great clarity. 11. Seek out stress reducers. When we are in a state of uncertainty, we trigger our own fight or flight response. That means our nervous system is in hyper alert mode. That's why so many of us have anxiety in conjunction with uncertainty. So we have to give our nervous system the tools for it to calm itself down. Also, we can't make good decisions because of how our brain functions when we're in fight or flight mode. So adding stress reducers to our life enables us to have access to the kinds of state of being which enable us to have a clear enough mind that we can actually see the situation clearly enough to make good decisions. This involves eating a diet which enables our nervous system to be calm instead of stimulated. The things that reduce your stress may be different from what reduces someone else's stress, so stay open to finding your perfect cocktail of stress reduction techniques. But here's a list of some ideas to start with. You can go for a walk somewhere in nature. Write. Take a hot bath with incense and candles. Watch funny video clips. Get a massage. Go camping. Do progressive relaxation techniques. Take a yoga class or dance. Listen to stress-reducing music. You can drink tea, especially black tea. You get the idea. Also, when we are in a state of uncertainty, our stress is greatly amplified if we are isolated. For this reason, I want you to repeat after me. It's okay to find support. Uncertainty is intolerable when we're going through that uncertainty on our own. You will find that we can go through almost anything as long as we have someone to go through it with us, or to be there for us while we go through it. So unless people greatly increase your stress levels at this point, what I want you to do is to connect with someone. If you have a difficult time connecting with people, look up my YouTube video titled, How to Connect with Someone. We will not win the war against uncertainty by becoming certain. We will not be able to become stable by trying to make the unstable stable. Instead, we find certainty and a sense of stability by embracing uncertainty and instability. Embracing uncertainty does not mean that we stop wanting. It doesn't mean that we stop creating our lives, and it doesn't mean that we stop taking action to create what we want. What it means is that we untangle our intention from our attachment so as to let our attachment go. The universe is always carrying us towards our highest good, even if the road to our highest good takes us straight through hell. The future is not certain for any of us. Even those of us who can see it can tell you that one single alteration to your perspective can change your entire future and your entire destiny. Life is like a journey through uncharted waters for us all. But if we try to resist what's coming in the future because we keep trying to avoid pain, we resist the waves of our life at our own peril. We also miss the sunsets on the ocean of our lives. And so I say, embrace uncertainty and tell the universe, bring it on. And then you will begin to see the sunsets. Have a good week.